So after a long time we are once again uploading the video on equilibrium price where we left behind. Now today we will be discussing that how will the equilibrium price of a commodity change when there is change in demand given its supply to be perfectly inelastic. See, supply is given to be perfectly inelastic means when the supply of a commodity does not change at all in response to a given change in price, it is called perfectly inelastic supply. Now in the given diagram, supply curve is vertical to x-axis and this is the demand curve which has intersected the supply curve at point E. This is the point of equilibrium. At this point, the price prevailing in the market is OP and at this price the equilibrium quantity is OQ. Now suppose supply remaining the same if the demand for the commodity increases. The demand curve will shift towards right and at the same price we find that the demand increases to OQ1. But what we find? That as supply is given to be constant or perfectly inelastic, the price will be shifted upward and the new equilibrium price will be determined at OP1, which is higher than the previous equilibrium price OP. Now similarly, if there is decrease in demand, the demand curve will shift towards left and we find that the new equilibrium is attained at point E2, at which the new equilibrium price is OP2, which is lower than the previous equilibrium price. But at this price, the quantity demanded and supplied in the market remains unchanged. So whenever supply is given to be perfectly inelastic, changes in demand will only affect the equilibrium price and not the equilibrium quantity. Now we are coming to the next aspect, that is how will the equilibrium price of a commodity change when there is change in supply given its demand to be perfectly inelastic. See here, when demand is given to be perfectly inelastic, the demand curve will be vertical to x-axis. So this is the demand curve. Now you know that supply curve is upward sloping to the right and the supply curve has intersected the demand curve DD at point E, at which the price prevailing in the market is OP. At this price the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. Now suppose if there is an increase in supply, the supply curve will shift towards right, that is S1 S1, and what we find that the new supply curve S1 has intersected the demand curve DD at point E1, at which the new equilibrium price is OP1, which is lower than before. However, at this price the quantity demanded and supplied in the market remains unchanged, that is OQ. And similarly, if there is decrease in supply, the supply curve will shift towards left and the new supply curve has intersected the demand curve DD at point E2, at which we find that the new equilibrium price prevailing in the market is OP2, which is higher than before. But at this price, the quantity demanded and supplied in the market remains unchanged. Coming to the next topic, that how will the equilibrium price of a commodity change when there is change in demand given its supply to be perfectly elastic. Now what is perfectly elastic supply? When the supply of a commodity may increase or decrease to any extent at the same price, it is called perfectly elastic supply. And in that case the supply curve will be parallel to x-axis. See here, in the given diagram we find that SS is the supply curve which is parallel to x-axis, Now you know that the equilibrium price is determined at that point where the demand curve intersects the supply curve. So in the given diagram we find that the demand curve DD has intersected the supply curve SS at point E, at which the equilibrium price is OP, and at this price the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. Now suppose if there is an increase in demand, the demand curve will shift towards right, and we find that the new equilibrium is attained at point E1 where the new demand curve D1 intersects the supply curve SS. At this point the price is OP, which is same as before. That is, the price remains unchanged. But at this price the quantity demanded and supplied increases to OQ1. Similarly, if there is decrease in demand, the demand curve will shift towards left, that is to D2, and the new equilibrium is attained at point E2, at which the price is how much? OP, which is same as before, but at this price the quantity demanded and supplied reduces to OQ2. So what we find that when supply is given to be perfectly elastic, changes in demand will not affect the equilibrium price of the commodity. It will affect only the equilibrium quantity. Now we are coming to the next question, that is, how will the equilibrium price of a commodity change when there is change in supply given its demand to be perfectly elastic? See here. Demand curve is parallel to x-axis because demand is given to be perfectly elastic. Now you know that supply curve slopes upward to the right because of the positive relationship that exists between price and quantity supplied. So the supply curve SS has intersected the demand curve DD at point E, at which the price prevailing in the market is OP. At this price the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. Now suppose if there is increase in supply, the supply curve will shift towards right. Now you know that supply may increase when there is use of a new production technique, or if there is a fall in the prices of factors of production, or if there is a change in the objective or goal of the firm, that will lead to the shift of the supply curve. So when there is increase in supply, the supply curve will shift towards right and the new equilibrium will be attained at E1, at which the equilibrium price is OP, which is same as before, but at this price the quantity demanded and supplied increases to OQ1. Now similarly, if there is decrease in supply, now supply may decrease on account of use of old production technique, or if there is rise in prices of factory inputs. In that case the supply will decrease and the supply curve will shift towards left, and the new equilibrium will be attained at point E2, at which the price is how much? OP, which is the same as before, but at this price the quantity demanded and supplied reduces to OQ2 from OQ. We will see that how will the equilibrium price of a commodity change when there is change in both demand and supply. See here, if both demand and supply changes, then if demand increases more than the increase in supply, what will be the effect on equilibrium price and quantity? So let us see here that this is the demand curve DD, which slopes downward to the right because of the inverse relationship that exists between price and quantity demanded, and supply curve is upward sloping to the right because of the positive relationship that exists between price and quantity supplied. Now this is the point of equilibrium. At this point the price which is prevailing in the market is OP. At this price the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. Now suppose the demand increases and the demand curve shifts towards right, that is to D1. and supply also increases, but not as much as the increase in demand. So the supply curve also shifts towards right, and you observe that the supply curve has shifted towards right, but not as much as the increase in demand. So here we find that the new demand curve D1 has intersected the supply curve S1 at E1, at which the new equilibrium price prevailing in the market is OP1, which is higher than before. And at this price, the quantity demanded and supplied increases to OQ1 from OQ. Now similarly, if supply increases more than the increase in demand, what will be its effect on the equilibrium price? Let us see here that in the given diagram, DD is the demand curve as earlier said, and SS is the supply curve. This is the point of equilibrium. At this point, the price which is prevailing in the market is OP. At this price, the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. Now demand increases and the demand curve shifts towards right, that is D1. But supply increases more than the increase in demand. So we are shifting the supply curve more than the increase in demand. See here, it has shifted largely as compared to the increase in demand. The new supply curve S1 has intersected the demand curve D1 at E1, at which the new equilibrium price is OP1, which is lower than before. But at this price, the quantity demanded and supplied increases to OQ1. And the third case is that if both demand and supply increases by the same proportion, what will be its effect on the equilibrium price and quantity? See here, in the given diagram, DD is the demand curve and SS is the supply curve. This is the point of equilibrium at which the price is how much OP and the equilibrium quantity is OQ. Now suppose demand increases and as a result the demand curve shifts towards right, that is D1, and supply also increases by the same proportion. So the supply curve will also shift towards right, that is S1. Now the new equilibrium is attained at E1, at which the price prevailing in the market is same, that is OP as before. But at this price, the quantity demanded and supplied increases to OQ1 from OQ. So dear students, now we are coming to two very important topics, that is price ceiling and price floor. Now let us first talk about what is price ceiling or what is maximum price legislation. You must know that in our country, the poor section of the society are oftenly seen that they are not in a position to buy the essential commodities because they are beyond their reach. So in order to protect the interest of the consumers, the government at times intervene in the free market price mechanism. What I have said, that in order to protect the interest of the consumers, the government intervene in the free price mechanism which is prevailing in the market and fixes up the price below the free market price, and the sellers are not supposed to sell their product at the price above the price which is fixed up by government by law. So see here in the given diagram, DD is the demand curve and SS is the supply curve. This is the point of equilibrium. At this point, the price which is prevailing in the market is OP. This is your free market price. And we are assuming that this price is too high and the goods are therefore beyond the reach of the customers. So in order to protect their interests, the government fixes up a maximum price for the product at P1. This represents price ceiling or maximum price legislation. Maximum price legislation. As a result of this, what happens? We find that with the fall in price, supply reduces to OQ1, whereas the demand for goods increases to OQ2. So therefore, there is an excess demand to the extent of Q1, Q2. Now what will be the impact? The impact will be if the government withdraws this price ceiling. The two forces will act and react on one another and the price will be forced up to OP, where the demand for and supply of the product in the market are equal. But if this is being maintained by the government, there will be excess demand, and those who have the ability to pay the price for the product but are unable to meet their demand at this price will pay a price higher than the price fixed up by the government by law, resulting in black marketing. So what will be the consequential effect? That when price ceiling is made, there will be black marketing. So what is black marketing? When the sellers sell their product at a price which is higher than the price which is fixed up by government by law, that is called as black marketing. Now the question arises that how black marketing can be controlled. This can be done through the distribution of goods among the people on rationing and quota system. That means the goods will be distributed among the people on the basis of rationing and quota. So this is how the problem is being solved. Coming to the concept of price floor, also called minimum price legislation. Now we have seen in our country that the workers do not get fair wages for their services. And similarly, the farmers in India do not get a reasonable price or a fair price for their produce. So in order to protect their interest, the government intervenes and fixes up a minimum price for the product, below which no seller will sell his product in the market, or a minimum wages is fixed below which no employer or the producers can hire workers from the factor market. So what will be the effect? Suppose this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve. This is the point of equilibrium, and the price prevailing at this point is OP. At this price, the quantity demanded and supplied is OQ. This is your free market price, as earlier said. Now what I have said, suppose the farmers are not getting a fair price for their crops. So the government intervenes and fixes up a minimum price above the free market price, say OP1. So this is what? This is price floor or minimum price legislation. So what happens? When the price is fixed at OP1, higher the price, lower is the quantity demanded, and higher the price, higher is the quantity supplied. So this results in excess supply in the market. So what we find? That at this price, as there is excess supply in the market, the sellers find it difficult to dispose of their surplus produce at the given price. And if the government withdraws such restriction, the price will come down to its state of equilibrium. But if the price is to be maintained at the existing level, that is OP1, in that case the government will have to purchase the entire surplus stock in order to maintain the price at the existing level. So this is the concept of price floor or minimum price legislation.